Hello, everybody. My name is Karen Caig, and I am your host of LRMT Spotlight. And today I'm so happy to have Kathy Golden here with me, and she's going to talk to us about Reiki, resilience, and trust, which is a great topic, something that we all need, especially in these uncertain times. So, Kathy, I'd like to welcome you. Thanks for joining me
Thank
today.
you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you're the perfect person to discuss this topic because I know that you've had just an incredible year. So, first of all, though,
Yeah,
I'd like you to start with like a definition. Could you define what you mean by resilience and
sure.
trust,
Yeah,
especially
absolutely. So,
resilience?
yeah, if we look at the actual definition of resilience, like what's in the dictionary, it's our capacity to recover quickly or to bounce back into shape again. So it's our ability when things happen, when difficult things happen, to bounce back again. And for me, it's a knowing, an inner knowing that I'll recover and that I'll recover powerfully.
Wow.
So
Yeah, it
that's what
is.
resilience is. Yeah. And then trust is an inner knowing that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And not just like, we sometimes tell ourselves, well, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm on my right path. We say those things, but we don't necessarily feel them deeply. Sometimes
I
those words
say it
come out.
until I don't like where it is.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, this doesn't work at all. So yeah, it's that inner knowing that you actually are on the right path for your soul's purpose, and then using Reiki to access the ability to do both of those things.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense because usually when you think of resilience or to say like, oh, I'm a resilient person, resilience is like what my skin used to be. It used to snap
Yeah.
back, but it doesn't anymore.
No,
And
that's collagen.
yeah, oh yeah, I guess so. But but resilience, like usually you think of it as something positive, but it's not. It isn't always a pretty sight, is it?
No, resilience. In fact, usually, I mean, I had a heck of a year, first of
Yeah,
all.
tell us
We'll just
about your
talk about
year.
that.
That's a good place to start.
So, in a 12-month window, so COVID hit, and that happened to everybody. That wasn't unique to me. So, COVID hit. I had a massive heart attack. I moved from a house to an apartment. My son, who has bipolar disorder, was in a car accident. He was fine, but he totaled his car, and that removed 100% of his sources of income. I spent 3 months taking care of my dad in Minnesota. He's got rapidly progressive dementia, and I had 2 weeks that I was quarantined. Then I moved. Then I went back to California, which is where I'm from, and packed up 75% of my stuff and put it in storage. Then I moved to Texas. That's a longer story we don't have to get into today, but it's for the ease of taking care of my dad. So my sister and I are doing bi-monthly care for him. So I'm actually in Minnesota right now taking care of him. So I drove to Texas, drove to Minnesota, and that's just how it's going to look for the foreseeable future. So when each one of those things happened, um, you know, I'm a I'm a Virgo in the true sense of the word. I like things um, well managed. I like them. I like to be nested. I don't like change. I like things to be predictable. And not one of these things that happened um, in 2020, none of them were on my bingo card, as people say. So it was completely unpredictable. And so my initial response to these things isn't, well, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. No, it's usually a variety of F bombs and victimization and pissed offness and oh my god, why is this happening to me? And I think that that's most people's normal response to stuff. It eventually you can get to the place where the resilience is happening, but my initial response is, oh heck no, this is not,
I'm so
this
glad to
was
hear
not
you
my
say
plan.
that because in because I consider the ICRT to be sort of a spiritual community,
Yeah.
um, and that's exactly my response too when stuff happens, and I like to think of myself as a spiritual person, but then when I react in a negative way, then I have guilt on top of that, like well that's not a very Reiki masterly thing to say or to
Yes.
respond, and then I have
Yeah.
guilt on top of everything else that I'm trying to deal with. So
Yeah.
you're saying, that's normal.
Absolutely. Well, we're these divine beings in these human bodies with a human mind, and the first thing that reacts is the human mind. And part of the game, and part of why Reiki is so beautiful is that it gives you access to that divine beingness again. So that's what I use Reiki for, or used for in these. I use it for a lot of different things, but in this past year, Reiki really supported me in reconnecting to that divine sense versus that automatic response, because there was a lot of that in the process.
Yeah.
And I learned something very powerfully. I've always kind of been good at landing on my own 2 feet. I've had a life that's had a lot of different difficulties in it, and I didn't really know why. And when I had a massive heart attack in July, and when I was in the hospital, actually in the emergency room, I just heard this loud voice, very gentle but loud voice that said, "Listen, I know this is not the direction you were planning to go. We need you to take a sharp left here, because there's a lot of healing to be done and we need you to be well." And that's when I felt like, okay, this is now a new tool that I'm being given, this ability to learn how to redirect. So instead of things coming at me like a breakdown, they're a redirection. It's a different, it's like a little Reiki Roomba, those little Roombas that they're going, sometimes they put cats on them, but in my mind, I'm seeing myself as like this little Reiki Roomba. I just hit a wall and I go, oh, I'm supposed to go over here. Oh, I'm supposed to go over here now. I'm supposed to go over here. So when
I
it's a
love that image.
redirection, yeah, it's fun.
It
I
is
like to
a
bring joy to
redirection.
everything.
Because as we discussed earlier, I think of or I used to think of resilience when I was younger as being like, never give up. Like you just keep going, and if you're hitting the wall, well, you just keep hitting that wall until it breaks.
Yeah, break that
But
moment.
that's not really resilience. It's more of the. I love that image. Like bong. Oh, okay. Bong. Oh, well, maybe this way. And
Yeah,
eventually, but that's where the trust comes in, I guess, with
where the trust comes in.
having
Yeah,
that connection, that divine connection that Reiki gives us. That's the underpinning, the foundation of knowing, like, okay, I guess it's not that direction. Let me try this direction. It gives you that freedom to
yeah,
open up and explore the possibilities.
yes. And to listen to guidance. And it's important to be able to discern what is the information, what are the thoughts that we're having in our head, and what is the guidance that we're receiving, the divine guidance, be able to discern between those two things. And usually thoughts that are in our head come through with a negative connotation. I should have done this better. I could have, the shoulda, woulda, couldas come in. When am I going to learn? Oh my gosh, what other lessons could I possibly have to learn in this case? This is, this issue's been coming up over and over again, really? Same boyfriend, same mother? My gosh. So, but when it's divine guidance, it comes through more like more loving and kind and gentle. Like, we need you to be well,
Wow.
versus I should have been doing this or I should have been doing that. Or with my son, after his car accident, he lost his source of income. Instead of, were you driving recklessly? Were you, all these negative things? It was, well, I think this is a redirection for you. Were you going to do food delivery for the rest of your life? Or is the universe saying to you, no, who do you want to be in the world? Now let's start now. So you want to do it when you get a whisper and not a brick. But sometimes you got a brick.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe
Yeah.
some of this comes with age, but I wish I wish I'd had you whispering in my ear when I was younger to give me that insight, because I had so much negative self-talk. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I love that you say that if it's divine guidance, it's going to be gentle with you. It's going to be
Yeah.
positive. It's
It's
not going to be, you should have
loving.
done that, and yeah.
Yep. And I think the most important thing to do too in these times where you're being redirected is to stay in action. It's important to stay moving. Because if you're not moving, you think you're stuck. That's your interpretation of what's happening, is you're stuck. No, you're not stuck. That Roomba is always moving until it's ready to go back in its little home. But then it's a choice that it's going back in the little home, and then you come back out again when you're ready to go. So thoughts that are hopeless, confused, anxious, lack of clarity, that's all more what happens in our mind. And the kind and bold and loving and gentle is the divine guidance.
Divine guidance.
And then you want to, like, that's where I was going. I forgot where I was going there for a second. You want to stay in action. So there's a whole part of trusting and manifesting here. So you've got this breakdown that happened. You're being redirected. You're using Reiki to support you in connecting with that divine self. And then you want to make sure that you keep moving, even if you don't know exactly you don't understand exactly what's happening. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do with my business moving from California to Texas to assist in the care for my dad.
Completely. Yeah,
Not
that's
that I would talk about trust, right? Yeah, complete and total trust. But I wasn't just trusting, like closing my eyes, crossing my fingers, hoping it would happen, because, hope is actually not a helpful tool necessarily. It's not.
I hope this happens. I hope my business does better when I'm,
Yeah.
What did you say earlier about?
I said, it's okay to pray for an abundant garden, but you'd better do it with a hoe in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. It's okay.
So it's okay to not have all the answers and not to have everything perfectly defined. But if you're feeling that guidance to go in a particular direction, follow that. Allow yourself to be redirected. These are all tools. As Reiki practitioners, we have a whole toolbox full of tools that we're given. And the beautiful thing about Reiki is that it's continuously adding more and more tools. And our job is just to be open to discovering what's been placed there.
And so then your life becomes more of a life of discovery rather than a life of frustration.
Yes, absolutely. Excited anticipation.
Sometimes I used to walk into my English classrooms when I taught college English, and I'd do well, what fresh hell awaits us today? Let's see. What fresh hell is this? But
I was laughing this morning. I put together some, bullet points of what I wanted to talk about today. And then just as I was saving it to print it, I lost the whole thing. And I thought, well, you know what happened first, because I already told you. and then I thought, well, I am doing a talk on resilience, so here we go. Thanks, universe.
Yeah, I did a TikTok about failing, and one of my favorite playwrights is the Samuel Beckett, who was an Irish playwright, and there's a quote from one of his plays where he said, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. I love that, because it's like, yeah. Or the Japan, and I also mentioned in that TikTok that the Japanese have a saying. It's nanokorobi yaoki, which means fall down 7 times, get up 8. And it kind of ties in with what you're saying about action. It's like, you fall down, you try another direction. But the important thing is to get up one more time than you fall down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking to see if we have any comments on our, no, or I was looking for questions. So,
sure.
Excuse me. I also wanted to ask about your dad. Because it's mind-boggling to me that, one, you had a heart attack, a massive heart attack, and COVID, that was enough to wipe most people out, just completely turn everything upside down. And then your son, and how did you manage to even figure out which direction to go? Where you're falling apart, and the people that you're supposed to be kind of taking care of, your son, your parents, and then they're falling apart.
Well, you don't do it alone. That's the first thing. So I've learned for myself, and I think it's true for a lot of people, that if you just go back into your head over and over and over again, you're not going to get a lot of helpful information. You're going to get the same thing kind of spit out in a different package all the time. And so I was guided to do some additional training. I actually worked in the Akashic Records. So I was guided, it was one of those things where on March 3rd, I was told March 7th, I need to do more training in the Akashic Records. And I thought it was going to be a way that I could add additional business, additional services to my business. but what it ended up being is very deep healing. So it was this like immersion training, because it needed to get done before I was coming up to take care of my dad. And it was deep, deep, deep healing. So we need to make sure when these kinds of things hit us that we're doing the healing physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the way through, and learn to accept the support of others. So I'm very independent, single mom for the majority of my son's life, business owner, office man, all of those things, but fiercely independent. And it was my sister that came up with the idea, why don't you just come and live in our home in Texas while we're taking care of dad? Why do you want to pay the cost of living in California when you're only going to be there 5 months out of the whole year? And my first answer was, no, thank you. And then I had to think of it for a while, and I thought, you know what, maybe I will do this. And she said, your life right now is about supporting and healing others and healing yourself. And we have the ability to support you with a lovely place to live that would support your well-being, your walking, your heart healthy life, and ease in getting back and forth from Minnesota. Would you allow us to support you? That's a whole different way to look at it. So
yeah. So
even though it was like, support, I don't need to be supported,
It reminds me of something I saw a while back. It said, extreme independence is a trauma response. And
that's one of mine. Yes. Well, I didn't.
It really
write
hit
it,
me.
but
And I thought,
yes.
oh God, it is. And that was something that I had kind of prided myself on, being independent. But that's, yeah. So that there's so many lessons. So part of being resilient and trusting is opening, so sometimes you do have to get just sort of like completely blown apart, cracked open,
Yeah.
to be able to put yourself back together. And what you end up with is it's like those Japanese vases, right, where there's a crack and they've repaired it, and that's the beauty, is the repair in the
Yes.
vase. And it's like, yeah, so that's kind of like the resilience. It's okay if you get cracked open. It's good to be cracked open, because it makes you start looking outside of yourself sometimes, like, into.
You bet. And we can't forget the gentleness of holy fire, the holy fire energy, because the ability to move from one of these breakdowns to another is really, the blow is softened tremendously with the holy fire energy. It's just such loving guidance, immediately when you want to go, oh God, what was I thinking? Holy fire's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And it's all as it should be. But you just got to keep going, though, with the hoe.
You have to stay in action with the hoe in your hand. You
Yeah.
got to keep moving and manifest a new outcome, come up with something new with excited anticipation.
There you go, with excited anticipation. That's great. Kathy, thank you so much for helping me understand what you mean by resilience and trust. And I think that we have a lot more in common even than I realized. And I know that the viewers will get a lot out of this. So if you guys have questions for Kathy or comments, be sure to post them below. This will be posted on YouTube later. So same thing, I check that for comments. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Kathy. Kathy, what's your website?
Please. My website is the Golden Method. You can Google the Golden Reiki Center, but it's thegoldenmethod.com.
Goldenmethod.com. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Karen.
I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.